Zulfi Bhutto of Pakistan. His Life and Times by Stanley Wolpert. Chapter 8. Free Elections and the Birth of Bangladesh, 1970 to 1971. Pakistan has never faced a more dangerous crisis in her 23 years than she faces today. On 14th March in Karachi's Nishtar Park, Zulfi spoke to a much smaller audience than Mujib's had been. Sincere efforts would suffice to preserve the integrity and solidarity of Pakistan. Zulfi insisted that only an intellectually bankrupt person could accuse him of colluding with the officialdom to create the current crisis. Who is Bhutto colluding with? It was not the capitalists. They have been asking for our heads. It was not the government officials. They tried to persecute me after I left the Ayub government. It was not the reactionaries. The whole struggle of Bhutto has been against the reactionaries. And about the so-called secret meetings with the president. We represent West Pakistan. He is forced to meet with us. Moreover, Yahya had been meeting with the majority party leader in the East. Zulfi argued that the current political crisis was compounded by economic inequities in trade and balance of payments between the East and the West. The Awami League alleges that West Pakistan owes 31 billion rupees to East Pakistan. But I cannot accept the position that West Pakistan should agree to pay this amount. And there is a total of rupees 40 billion loan in foreign exchange. The Awami League contends that West Pakistan will have to pay 38 billion rupees. Now, if I had compromised with them, you would have questioned my integrity. And since the East Pakistanis are in a majority, I would have been unable to do anything. That posed a problem in logical behavior. Professing faith in democracy, Zulfi had no intention of accepting a decision taken by a simple majority of Bengalis. Please remember this crisis was inevitable, Zulfi declared. On the one hand, East Pakistan wanted virtual independence, and on the other, West Pakistan did not want to be exploited. The crisis was destined to come. Collusions were made with the forces of darkness. A big upheaval took place. The introduction of socialism alone is the way to help the poor and to eliminate exploitation from both East and West Pakistan. On this, there should be no question of majority or minority. If they are in a majority there, we are in a majority here. Pakistan consists of two parts. Both parts have to prosper equally. We want power to be transferred. There is no other way out. His mind kept racing back and forth frantically, seeking a way out. Yet, part of him knew it was too late. The die of martial decision had been cast. My dear friends, I have been weeping for my Bengali brothers. I am dying to be able to help them because they are being killed. I cannot sleep these days. I have always served Bengal. Bengalis are our brothers. Mr. Mujibur Rahman, I say to you, you have made a mistake. Let us sit together. Let us go to the assembly and frame a constitution there so that martial law is buried and power transferred to the people. A constitution can be framed. And if you are to go on talking about a Bangladesh, we too, in view of our majority, can talk about Sindh Desh or Punjab Desh. In that case, it would be asked, where has the Pakistan of Quaid-e-Azam gone? The crowd cheered wildly, tearfully. Zulfi was skilled at pressing every button of West Pakistani emotion. The repeated promise of sacrifice of his own life gave him the aura of a Muslim martyr. The reiteration of his faith in Pakistan and in the Quaid-e-Azam's dream added luster to his image, even as his reminder that he alone had the strength to stand against both superpowers and India added muscle to his stature. He was braver than the brave, bigger and tougher than any soldier or general. How could it be said that he would join with anyone or anything to destroy Pakistan? The day after Zulfi spoke, Yahya flew to Dhaka to meet Mujib. Balochi political leader Nawab Akbar Khan Bukti had been in Dhaka and had urged the flight. Bukti believed that Mujib was willing to lead a unified Pakistan. Bukti blamed Bhutto for the current deadlock, insisting that he was worse and more ruthless than former President Ayub Khan. Many other minority party leaders in the West, who agreed on virtually nothing else, agreed in denouncing Zulfi Bhutto for creating a crisis. At a press conference in Karachi on 15th March, Zulfi announced his final solution to the deadlock. It is not we who have demanded a constitution based on two economies and virtually two countries. We have said that in framing a constitution for Pakistan, the West Wing must be heard and protection for its legitimate interests incorporated. We say that power should be handed over to the representatives of the people in both wings. We say that at the center power should be transferred to the majority parties of both wings, and in the provinces to the majority parties in the provinces. Only such an agreement will ensure the unity of Pakistan. It was Zulfi's boldest attempt to reach over Yahya's head to Mujib, inviting his Bengali counterpart to join forces in a people's revolution. Mujib, who trusted Zulfi Bhutto no more than he trusted Yahya or any other West Pakistani, ignored the daring invitation. Pathan Khan Abdul Wali Khan, president of the National Awami Party in the Northwest Frontier Province, insisted that Bhutto had no standing in the NWFP and hence could not speak for that part, at least, of West Pakistan. The former Air Marshal Asghar Khan was equally negative about Bhutto's proposal, as were leaders of every other party in the West. Mia Mumtaz Muhammad Doltana, president of the Council Muslim League of Punjab, said that since there is only one Pakistan, there can be no question of two majority parties in one country running the affairs of the country. Mujib called for greater non-cooperation, vowing that the struggle would continue with renewed vigor until our goal of emancipation is realized. Dhaka and all other major cities of Bangladesh remained paralyzed by the strike, which was remarkably effective in the face of martial law and the army. More civilians were shot, however, as soldiers opened fire in Joydavipur. Yahya met Mujib for an hour and a half on March 19th in the president's house in Dhaka, and they agreed to meet again the following morning. Asked by reporters how the talks had gone, Mujib responded glumly, "I always hope for the best and prepare for the worst." On 21st March, Zulfi flew to Dhaka with his party's team of advisors. On seeing the green fields of Dhaka when the plane was descending, Zulfi recalled, "I was overcome by an indescribable sensation. I could not believe that in the last few years so much resentment had grown that our brothers and sisters should revolt against the country for which so many had shed blood." A military escort took him to Dhaka's Intercontinental Hotel, where the top floor presidential suite had been reserved for him. An angry crowd of Awami Leaguers shouted abuses and indulged in hooliganism as he entered the hotel lobby and waited for the elevator that had been slowed down by Mujib's strike. When the elevator's gold door finally opened, Iqbal Ismay stepped out with one of Mujib's closest lieutenants. Zulfi, by now tired of waiting and hearing abusive Bengali, pointed an angry finger at Mujib's colleague. "I know where you're off to, and I want you to tell him that I am the destiny." Mujib's friend only smiled. That evening, Zulfi met with Yahya at the president's house, and over drinks and dinner, Yahya briefed him on his meetings with Mujib. Mujib had proposed the immediate withdrawal of martial law and the convening of the National Assembly, divided ab initio into two committees, one for West Pakistan and the other for Bangladesh. The committee for West Pakistan would meet in Islamabad, that for Bangladesh in Dhaka. Both committees would prepare their separate reports and discuss and debate ways and means of living together. An interim arrangement would give East Pakistan autonomy on the basis of 6 points, and the West Wing would be free to work out their quantum of autonomy according to a mutually acceptable procedure, subject to the President's approval. Yahya would continue running the central government until a new constitution could be approved by the Assembly. Yahya had tentatively agreed to the proposal, subject primarily to my agreement. Zulfi recalled in his great tragedy Recapitulation of those dark and fateful late March days. The scheme was fraught with danger, Zulfi felt. I wanted a little time for reflection. He told Yahya that he could say nothing without the benefit of advice from his colleagues, who, upon his return to the hotel, expressed their misgivings and suggested that I should not accept the proposal as it contained the seeds of two Pakistans. I was relieved to get their reactions, which were similar to my own. The next morning at 11 o'clock, he returned to the President's house for his first meeting with Mujib and Yahya. After the usual small talk, Mujib turned to the President and asked him if he had given his final approval to the proposals of the Awami League. The President reminded him that it was necessary for me also to agree, and for that reason I was present. On that, Mujibur Rahman remarked that the proposals had been communicated to the President and it was for the President to convince me, and went on to say that once Mr. Bhutto agreed in principle to the proposals, they could hold formal discussions, but until then the discussions were of an informal nature. The President replied that this was not good enough, but Mr. Mujibur Rahman remained adamant. Was Yahya simply using Bhutto's recalcitration as his excuse for rejecting Mujib's offer? Why else, after all, would he say that it was necessary for Bhutto to agree before he could express his own final approval, and that informal discussions among the three were not good enough? Had the President General and his military colleagues already decided upon their course of action, and was all this political and constitutional haggling merely a delaying tactic? Or had Yahya himself, in fact, fallen hostage to Zulfi's power play? Had their dinner tete-a-tete the previous evening given simple-minded Yahya the courage, thanks to Zulfi's shrewd analysis of Mujib's proposal and his outspoken advice against capitulating to such a Bengali ultimatum, to reject Mujib's scheme? Whatever their motives and feelings may have been, those three men who held the fate of Pakistan in their hands that morning of March 22nd, 1971, might still have averted the imminent tragedy of genocidal war had they but reached some agreement. Instead, they parted swiftly without resolving anything. Zulfi followed Mujib out of the President's office. I was a little surprised, he later wrote, by what he called Mujib's sudden change of attitude as soon as they were alone in the next room. Mujib had asked the military secretary to leave so that they could talk. According to Zulfi, he grasped me by the hand and made me sit next to him. He told me that the situation was very grave and that he needed my help to overcome it. At this point, thinking the room might be bugged, we walked out to the veranda towards the back of the house and sat in the portico. Zulfi then reports that Mujib told me that he now realized that the People's Party was the only force in West Pakistan and that the other politicians of West Pakistan were wasting his time. It was essential for the two of us to agree. He told me I could do whatever I wanted in West Pakistan and he would support me. In return, I should leave East Pakistan alone and assist him. He suggested that I should become the Prime Minister of West Pakistan and he would look after East Pakistan. Even retrospectively, Zulfi could not quite bring himself to write of Mujib as a potential Prime Minister of East Pakistan, only that Mujib would look after that wing. But how easily I should become the Prime Minister of West Pakistan flowed from his pen. That, of course, was Zulfi's own scheme by now, Siyasat. Zulfi's remarkably creative little work, appropriately entitled The Great Tragedy, continues. According to him, this was the only way out of the impasse. He cautioned me against the military and told me not to trust them. If they destroyed him first, they would also destroy me. I replied that I would much rather be destroyed by the military than by history. He pressed me to give my consent to his proposal and to agree to the setting up an ab initio of the two committees. He told me that he would like to meet me again and that he would arrange a secret meeting between the two of us. In the meantime, I should ask Mr. Ghulam Mustafa Khar to keep in touch with him. I explained to Mujib ar-Rahman that my request for the postponement of the National Assembly had been made in good faith and that his reaction was unnecessarily violent. I told him that I would naturally give him my most careful thought to his proposal and do everything possible to arrive at a fair settlement. Yahya had watched the two men as they walked round the garden path through the parted curtains of his window and sent for Zulfi after Mujib departed. When the president expressed his surprise at what he called the honeymoon between the two of you, I told him that such dialogues are a part of politics. Zulfi recorded. He then also conveyed his considered opinion of Mujib's proposal. I could not be a party to the proposed scheme as it inevitably meant two Pakistans. This was my main objection, but it also contained other serious defects. Provincial autonomy for the West Wing would be difficult to work out, Zulfi reasoned, and because martial law was the source of law then obtaining in Pakistan, lifting it would remove all legal authority from the president and the central government. There would thus be a vacuum, Zulfi noted, and bringing his never-forgotten Latin into play, added that the government of each province could acquire de facto and de jure sovereign status. Ever suspicious of Mujib's motives. In such a situation, nothing could stop the secession of East Pakistan. Thus, he armed Yahya with legal and subtle political reasons for justifying the military solution that the latter naturally favored. Even more than Zulfi, no doubt, Yahya was sufficiently intoxicated to believe that a show of force would suffice to bring Mujib and his Bengalis to their senses. I suggested to the president that he should exert his authority and influence to make Mujibur Rahman agree to a compromise. Zulfi wrote, surely it was reasonable to expect Mujibur Rahman to make some sensible adjustment that would preserve national unity and at the same time give him the substance of his demands. Yahya then requested me to discuss all these questions in detail with his experts, for the little president himself had no need to waste any more of his precious time on these petty political squabbles and endless useless argument. His military mind was now resolved on its next moves. He had never studied Latin, but he knew his duty when faced with a party preaching treasonous secession. The 23rd of March 1971 was celebrated throughout West Pakistan as the 31st anniversary of the Muslim League's adoption of its Lahore Resolution, annually remembered as Pakistan Day. But that morning, most Dhaka newspapers brought out a special supplement headlined Emancipation of Bangladesh. It included a message from Sheikh Mujibur Rahman that ours is the right cause and hence victory is ours, ending with Joy Bangla. The same day, Yahya announced another postponement of the convening of the National Assembly, giving no new date. At a press conference in Dhaka on that day, Zulfi said, "We want a democratic arrangement for the future of the country and to the satisfaction of the people of both wings." Yahya sent a Pakistan Day message to all loyal Pakistanis and troops, East and West. Today, we must rededicate ourselves to the principles enunciated by the father of the nation, namely, unity in our ranks, faith in our destiny, and discipline in the conduct of our affairs. Mujib addressed a huge crowd in front of his house at 32 Dhanmandi Road in Dhaka on the evening of 23rd March, which he called Resistance Day. Under the flag of Bangladesh, he declared, "Our people have learned to shed blood for the achievement of their just and legitimate cause, and any intimidation, coercion, and application of force to resist them will simply be an exercise in futility." By 24th March, reports that the military was firing on civilians were pouring into Awami League headquarters in Dhaka. Tajuddin Ahmad, General Secretary of the party, stated that any attempt to frustrate the efforts of arriving at a political solution would be reckless. He urged those concerned to desist from such actions and called upon the people to be vigilant and ready to make any sacrifice to defeat the conspiracies of anti-people forces. Mujib reaffirmed that night that we will free the people of Bangladesh. Either we shall live like men or we shall go out of existence fighting for our cause. Zulfi met with Yahya and Pirzada again on the morning of 24th March and told them that the time for a settlement seemed to be running out. I informed the president that I had sent back some of my party leaders as I felt that their presence was more necessary in West Pakistan. But Zulfi and Khar, who had received a secret message from Mujib, stayed on a bit longer. Khar met with Mujib that night and reported he found him perturbed over the firings in Chittagong. The next morning, Zulfi returned for another talk with Yahya and Pirzada at the president's house, bringing along J.A. Rahim as well as Khar. They were all booked to fly out of Karachi the next day, on the fateful morning of 26th March. On the night of 25th March, Zulfi and his friends went to our rooms after they finished dinner at about 10:30. An hour later, we were awakened by the noise of gunfire, Zulfi wrote. A number of my friends came to my room. We witnessed from our hotel room the military operations for about 3 hours. A number of places were ablaze, and we saw the demolition of the office of the newspaper, The People. This local English daily had indulged in crude and unrestrained provocation against the army and West Pakistan. With the horizon ablaze, my thought turned to the past and to the future. Had we reached the point of no return, or would time heal the wounds and open a new chapter in the history of Pakistan? Zulfi tried to phone Yahya soon after Operation Searchlight started, but learned to his surprise that the president had already flown home. Even as Zulfi watched the fatal fire light up Dhaka's midnight sky, Yahya was sipping his scotch and soda at 40,000 feet over Ceylon. US M24 tanks led the Punjabi Balochi assault upon student dormitories on the campus of the University of Dhaka. Iqbal and Jagannath halls were filled with sleeping students and faculty when the tanks opened fire and continued shooting for at least 5 minutes. Soldiers crouched behind the tanks, then charged into the shell-battered domes with fixed bayonets and killed all persons still alive. Students, professors, caretakers and servants. Tika Khan's troops were thorough. Zulfi flew home on the morning of 26th and later recalled. On our way to the airport, we saw the flag of Bangladesh coming down from the housetops and barricades on the streets. I was again haunted by thoughts of the future. I prayed that this turn in events should not degenerate into a protracted internecine conflict. I hoped that the patriotism of the common people would reappear in vigor and that the nightmare of fascism would disappear. A tumultuous crowd welcomed us at Karachi airport and insisted that I make a speech. But I was in no mood for speeches. I nevertheless did manage to say, by the grace of God, Pakistan has at least been saved. In my heart, I hoped and I prayed that I was right. The future will tell whether Pakistan has been saved or lost. But this much can safely be said that if the regime had not acted on that night of the 25th, on the following day, the Awami League would have declared the independence of Bangladesh. For most of the world, however, the genocidal massacre unleashed by Pakistani forces on 26 March 1971 was a much louder and more memorable proclamation of the independence of Bangladesh than any proclamation to that effect that Mujib might have made on the radio. Clearly, Zulfi agreed with Yahya and Tikka's final solution to the Bangladesh problem, and like them, he obviously considered Mujib's Awami League demand and the hoisting of Bangladesh flags atop buildings all over Dhaka a nightmare of fascism. The rest of humankind would see the massacre of innocents as every foreign correspondent and most foreign diplomats in Dhaka did. A dreadful example of the weakness of military terror and the limits of power when it comes to repressing a popular demand for national freedom. Consul General Archer Blood, senior US diplomat in Dhaka, cabled Washington at the time to report the mass killing of unarmed civilians, the systematic elimination of the intelligentsia, and the annihilation of the Hindu population. With Dhaka still burning the next morning and Bangladesh emerging bloody but unbowed, Yahya went on Pakistan radio to declare that Sheikh Mujibur Rahman's action of starting his non-cooperation movement is an act of treason. He and his party have defied the lawful authority for over 3 weeks. They have insulted Pakistan's flag and have tried to run a parallel government. They have created turmoil, terror, and insecurity. The armed forces located in East Pakistan have been subjected to taunts and insults of all kinds. I wish to compliment them on the tremendous restraint that they have shown. I am proud of them. Mujib had been taken from his home by Pakistani troops the night before after the firing had started on the Dhaka University campus. He was kept in prison on the Dhaka cantonment till 1st April and then flown to West Pakistan and placed in solitary confinement in Miawali jail, in the same VIP cell that had held Zulfi Bhutto years earlier. I was in the house, Mujib told Zulfi at year's end, while still a prisoner in Pindi. I knew everything that was happening there, but I did not escape. What for? Only to save the country. No violence. I could have put up a fight, but I did not. So many people would have died. He had as yet been allowed to see no news reports of the massacre of civilians in Bangladesh that started just before he was arrested. But I had no doubt Yahya wanted to arrest me. I had asked all political leaders to leave the house before my arrest. I will court arrest because it is my country. They started a machine gun in the house. Tell me, what is the position of my country? Mujib asked Zulfi, who had just taken over from Yahya as President of Pakistan 9 months later and visited his Bengali prisoner on 27th December 1971. Position of the country is, President Bhutto replied, nervously, evasively. I told him, Yahya, you must immediately bring about political settlement and not let this bloodbath take place. You must restore to rule the elected leaders, he said. Yes, yes, we'll do it very soon.